So, pirates, huh? Flesh and Blood has High Seas announced. I don't know, it was a few days ago. Uh, Looks pretty cool. The box looks cool. Uh, and the theme is obviously high sea adventures, mostly with pirates. And yeah, some of the heroes look cool. I don't play the game that much, so I'm not someone to comment on whether or not they're particularly good heroes for the game or the meta or whatever. But some of the stuff that is, I guess, being introduced with this set or reintroduced, um, it's they claim there's going to be booty and treasure. I don't know. Maybe that's some new mechanic. But also, there's treasure packs, which is a continuation, I guess, of the golden packs from Misthaven or Mistveil. The golden packs that were incredibly hard to find. I managed to pull one, but in lots of box opening videos, you just never see one. It wasn't a box opening video that I pulled it in. It was I was going to fill up the booster dispenser, and as I finished filling it up, I noticed the gold pack there. I'm like, huh, that's interesting. And then I remembered that Rudy from Alpha Investments had been talking about some golden packs, and then I looked it up. I'm like, holy crap, these things are valuable. So that's set aside in a prize vault. Anyway, the High Seas thing will see the return of those, except that it seems to be one per booster pack, so more of a box topper, but with gold wrapping, but not the same as the chase that you would get in a Mistveil box. So, that's, I mean, I think it was hard to get, maybe made it a little less hard to get the golden packs, but then it's not the same thing as the Charlie and the Chocolate Factory theme. So, I don't know. They should have still made it difficult to find and maybe had some other kind of box topper, and then one in every certain number of boxes has a golden box topper instead. I don't think that's what they're doing, but that would be way more exciting to open. I had this idea when I was looking at the Flesh and Blood announcement about sites, about the idea of, so this is a fighting game, a one-on-one fighting game, a 1v1 game. And what a lot of fighting games have in common, mostly in video game form, but I mean, this is drawing on sort of video game, fighting game type of thematics, is that they have a map location where the fight takes place, and depending on who it is you're fighting and at what level you're fighting at in a game, that map location happens. Like, there's Guile's air base in Street Fighter 2, and there's whatever fighting game you can think of. Each character has a map or several maps associated with them. Like, Blanca is the streets of Brazil. The streets of I don't know, some city in Brazil. In any case, it would be cool to have a sort of global mechanic for people to play a site, and obviously, it can't just be one player that benefits from it, and it can't be one player that chooses it. So you could just have a global mechanic that gets replaced by other sites, depending on some sort of I don't know, some sort of thing that has to happen for a site to be replaced, like a critical hit of some kind, and then you bust through a wall and now you're in another site. Although I guess if you're somehow busting through a wall going from a pirate ship to to the top of the pyramids, that would be kind of weird, but whatever. I think that would be an interesting addition to Flesh and Blood. I don't know that something like that will happen. I'm just thinking, having this idea of a location for the fight that you're having seems like a cool idea for a 1v1 game. In any case, so High Seas is going to come out in June, I think, sometime in the summer. And, there are no The Hunted boxes to be found anywhere, really. Maybe on TCG Player for a very high price or eBay for a very high price, but they're not in pretty much any store for MSRP at this point. You're not going to find them because they were under-ordered because of what had been happening generally in the economy. in the TCG market, and then specifically with Flesh and Blood. There were some mistakes that were made around. Probably the mistakes were made before Monarch, but the Monarch carried the brunt of those mistakes, and those mistakes weren't necessarily willful or be, based on the available information at the time. They didn't probably seem like mistakes, but they became very big mistakes after Monarch was released, especially with what happened with Channel Fireball holding back boxes just to drive up the price. And then that, it shocked the market and created distrust in the market. And then the overall economy kind of, did that as well. And so for the longest time, Flesh and Blood boxes have been widely available at distribution all the way back to Monarch and slightly before, because some of the unlimited boxes from like Welcome to Wrath and other ones are, you can still find them at some distributors. So those boxes have been available for stores to bring in, and so therefore they're probably also sitting on shelves at stores because people had moved away from Flesh and Blood, or maybe they bought less Flesh and Blood or something like that. But the market for Flesh and Blood had kind of dried up, and you could maybe count on a few diehards of Flesh and Blood, but the game was maybe only growing very slowly as opposed to its meteoric rise in 2020 and 2021. But now the print runs are tighter, and also the game has, it's good. It's been shown to have staying power. It's just a really fun game that people love to play, and unlike a lot of the other games, it has a very specific thing that it's doing that is in many ways innovative and still innovates. And also the boxes are just fun to open because of all the different types of things you could be chasing in a box. And then the EV on a box is good, usually above what you paid for the box. So unlike with most collectible card games, Flesh and Blood, you can open up a box and you could sell the cards in it and get the price of your box back, if not more. And that used to be a thing that was common amongst collectible games. I remember people who were HeroClix players back in the early 2010s to 2015. By about 2014, 2015, they were bemoaning that they couldn't open up a brick of HeroClix and sell it for more than they paid for it. And Magic players were complaining about the same thing. And I assume Pokemon players were too. I don't know. I don't remember that kind of discussion. But I think there was this period. I don't know how long this period or where the period had begun, whether it went back to the beginning of Magic the Gathering, whether you could open up a box and get more than your value. I suspect it was mostly based on 2008 to 2014, that brief period of very low print runs because of a market meltdown. But I don't know for sure. So if anyone does know the history of that, share it with me in the comments, because I'd like to know what it was, what was going on in the TCG market and why that specific idea that you could open up a product and get more than what you paid for it out of it, because that's, as far as I know, unique to this hobby. It's not a thing that happens with other products at retail. You usually, things that you buy at retail, you walk out of the store and you've lost value on it. And so that's sort of a tangent, but Flesh and Blood has gotten back to that point somehow, but mostly probably because people have shied away from sealed boxes and they are only buying as much as they want to open, and the players themselves are mostly going after singles. So the people that would be cracking boxes may still have this mindset that Flesh and Blood is a loser and just haven't brought it into their store, or they haven't, if they're a whatnot rip and shipper, they're not doing Flesh and Blood. But that might change soon. I mean, I think people are starting to notice that the value proposition for Flesh and Blood has changed. But mostly, what people should have noticed is that the old comment about Flesh and Blood in 2020 was no one plays this game. This is just investors selling boxes back and forth. It was ridiculous then, and it's clearly even more ridiculous now. There have been people playing this game for a long time, and everyone who plays it loves it. I mean, maybe that's true of a lot of collectible card games, but Flesh and Blood players are particularly diehard about Flesh and Blood. And if you've played it, you would know why. I mean, I've only played a few games, and it's a unique game, and it is a good game, and it is something that is, I think, welcome in this collectible card hobby, because it doesn't just become a Magic clone or a Pokemon clone or something like that. It is a game unique to itself, and it has its own virtues and some of its own negatives, sure. And the company that made it, almost didn't shepherd it through a bad time, but they did make really good decisions, and they kept through the hard times, and they steered their ship through the storm into the high seas. And now this set is going to be probably a banger, and if you don't pre-order it, you're probably not going to get it, because a lot of people don't have the Hunted because they thought, I don't need to order Flesh and Blood product. It's just always available on the shelf when I need it. Or I'm not going to buy Flesh and Blood product because who cares about Flesh and Blood? But we'll see with High Seas what happens, because if the Hunted is any indicator, it's going to be very difficult to get the High Seas, because the Hunted, while it's really cool and it's got some really great cards in it, I think the theme of High Seas is even more enticing to people who haven't played the game. So I would check it out if you can and get a pre-order from a local store that you trust, because you may never see it again. And you might regret it because it looks really cool. Thanks a lot.